My millionaire husband invited his ex to my brother's luxury wedding, so I gave him a priceless lesson. My name is Elena, I'm 32 years old, and my millionaire husband looked me straight in the eye and said, I invited my ex to your brother's luxury wedding. She's basically family. If you trust me, you'll get it. I smiled through the pain and said, of course I do. But what he didn't know is that I had already asked her husband to be my plus one. Before I tell you what happened next, like this video, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from, because this one still makes my hands shake. You know what's funny about betrayal? It never comes from strangers. It comes from the people who know exactly where to aim the knife, so it hurts the most. My husband Marcus knew my brother's wedding was everything to me. He knew I'd been planning for months, coordinating with the wedding planner, helping choose the flowers, the venue, the menu. This wasn't just any wedding, this was a $300,000 affair at the Chateau Marmont, with Hollywood executives, tech moguls, and old money families all watching. And Marcus knew that having his ex-girlfriend Rachel there would destroy me. Let me paint you the picture of my so-called perfect life. Marcus and I had been married for 4 years. He owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across California, drove a different Lamborghini every day of the week, and our Malibu house had ocean views that made people weep. I thought I was living the dream. Designer clothes hanging in a walk-in closet bigger than most apartments, a black card with no limit, and a husband who introduced me at parties as his queen. But queens, real queens, don't get humiliated at family weddings. The red flags with Rachel had been there for years. She'd text him at midnight about car troubles. She'd show up to his dealership wearing dresses that belonged in nightclubs, not business meetings. And Marcus? He'd always defend her with that same line, she's basically family. We've known each other since college. You're being insecure. Insecure. That word became his weapon of choice every time I questioned their relationship. Every time I asked why she needed to call him instead of AAA, why she couldn't buy her cars anywhere else, why every conversation with her lasted an hour minimum. Insecure, insecure, insecure. Until I started believing maybe I was crazy. But the wedding invitation, that was different. That was war. My brother David had spent 2 years planning this wedding. His fiancée Emma came from money, the kind of family that owned buildings in Manhattan and had their names on museum wings. This wedding was going to be featured in Architectural Digest. There would be photographers, journalists, people whose opinions could make or break careers. This was our family's moment to shine, and Marcus knew it. So when he casually mentioned over breakfast that he'd invited Rachel, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, crack. Like ice on a lake when you know you're about to fall through. You did what? I asked, setting down my coffee cup with hands that were already starting to tremble. I invited Rachel to David's wedding, he repeated, not even looking up from his phone. She's been going through a rough time with the divorce proceedings, and I thought it would be good for her to get out. Plus, she's basically family. There it was. That phrase again. Basically family. Marcus, this is my brother's wedding. This is. I struggled to find words that wouldn't make me sound like the hysterical wife he always painted me as. This is important to me. To my family. And Rachel is important to me, he said, finally looking up with those cold blue eyes that used to make me feel special but now just made me feel small. If you trust me, you'll get it. She's going through a hard time, and as her friend, I'm supporting her. That's what good people do. Good people. As if I was somehow deficient for not wanting his ex-girlfriend at my brother's wedding. As if my discomfort was a character flaw. Of course I trust you, I heard myself saying, and I hated how small my voice sounded. I wish you'd talk to me first. I'm talking to you now, he said, already turning back to his phone. Besides, it's done. The invitation's been sent. The invitation's been sent. Like it was a business transaction he couldn't undo. Like my feelings were just paperwork that had already been filed. I sat there in our $20,000 kitchen, surrounded by Italian marble and custom cabinets, feeling more worthless than I'd ever felt in my life. This man who claimed to love me had just told me, in the politest possible way, that his ex-girlfriend's comfort was more important than mine. That her emotional needs came before mine. That at my own brother's wedding, I would be playing second fiddle to a woman who'd been trying to reclaim my husband for years. But here's the thing about being pushed too far, sometimes you don't explode. Sometimes you just get very, very quiet. I spent the rest of that day in a haze of rage and humiliation. I called my best friend Sarah, but what was I supposed to say? My millionaire husband is taking his ex to my brother's wedding, and I'm too much of a doormat to stop it? I started to dial my brother, but David had enough stress with the wedding planning. I couldn't dump this on him. So I did what I always did. I swallowed the pain and started planning my outfits for the weekend. Because that's what good wives do, right? They smile and support their husbands, even when those husbands are systematically destroying their self-worth. That night, Marcus came home late from dinner with clients. He smelled like Rachel's perfume, that sickly sweet vanilla scent I'd learned to recognize from her previous visits to his office. But when I asked about his evening, he just said he was tired and went straight to the guest room. We hadn't shared a bed in 3 weeks. I lay there in our California king, staring at the ceiling and feeling like the biggest fool who ever lived. Here I was in a house worth $8 million, married to a man who made more in a month than most people see in a lifetime, and I felt like I had nothing. No respect, no voice, no power. And that's when it hit me. If you believe in fighting for your dignity, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, because what happened next changed everything. I'd been thinking about this all wrong. I'd been focused on stopping Marcus from bringing Rachel, but that was never going to work. He'd already made his choice, and he'd made it clear that my feelings didn't matter. But that didn't mean I was powerless. See, here's what Marcus didn't know about his basically family ex-girlfriend. Rachel was married. Her husband's name was Daniel, and he was a photographer who specialized in wedding and event photography. I'd seen his work on Rachel's social media, back when I was still naive enough to follow her, thinking that maybe if I got to know her better, I'd understand why she was so important to Marcus. Daniel seemed like a nice guy. Quiet, artistic, completely unaware that his wife was spending her evenings texting my husband about her car troubles. The divorce Marcus mentioned? That was news to me. Last I'd seen on social media, Rachel and Daniel were celebrating their 3rd wedding anniversary just 2 months ago. So either Rachel was lying to Marcus about her marriage troubles, or she was lying to everyone else about how happy she was. Either way, I was betting Daniel didn't know his wife had been invited to be another man's +1 at a luxury wedding. I spent 3 sleepless nights researching Daniel Martinez. Professional photographer, graduated from Art Center College of Design, specialized in luxury events for high-end clients. His portfolio was stunning. He'd photographed weddings for tech executives, movie stars, old money families. The kind of person who would fit right in at David's wedding. The kind of person who would make the perfect +1. My hands were shaking when I finally worked up the courage to send him a message on Instagram. I crafted it carefully, making sure it sounded casual, friendly, completely innocent. Hi Daniel. I'm Elena Williams. I think we have a mutual friend in Rachel. I'm getting married next month, a small lie but necessary, and I'm absolutely in love with your photography style. I know this is last minute, but I'm attending a luxury wedding this weekend at Chateau Marmont, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in being my guest? There will be amazing vendors there, and it could be great networking for your business. Plus, I'd love to have a professional photographer's eye to help me capture some candid moments for my own upcoming wedding. Would you be interested? I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then immediately wanted to throw my phone across the room. What was I doing? This was insane. My phone buzzed. Hi Elena. How nice to hear from you. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. Thank you for thinking of me. I'd love to attend. Chateau Marmont is such a gorgeous venue. Should I bring my camera equipment, or were you thinking more casual documentation? I stared at his response, my heart pounding so hard I was sure the neighbors could hear it. He said yes. Daniel said yes, and he had no idea what he'd just agreed to. Just casual documentation would be perfect, I typed back. It's a black tie event. Cocktail hour starts at 6. I can pick you up if that's easier, or we can meet there, whatever works best for you. Meeting there works great. Thank you again for the invitation. Rachel will be so excited to hear that I'm attending such a high-profile event. She's always telling me I need to network more. Rachel will be so excited. If only he knew. The week leading up to the wedding was torture. Marcus was busier than usual, claiming he had big deals closing that required his full attention. But I noticed he was getting his hair cut twice in 1 week, buying new cologne, spending extra time at the gym. All for Rachel, I was sure. Meanwhile, I was playing the role of the perfect wife. I helped him pick out his tuxedo. I made dinner reservations for the rehearsal dinner. I even asked, with a smile that made my face ache, if Rachel had any dietary restrictions I should mention to the caterer. "You're being so understanding about this," Marcus said the night before we left for the hotel. "I knew you'd come around. This is why I married you, Elena. You're not like other women, you're secure enough to handle my friendships." Secure enough to handle his friendships. As if his emotional affair with Rachel was just a friendship I needed to be secure enough to tolerate. "I trust you completely," I said, and technically, that was true. I trusted him to be exactly the selfish, manipulative man he'd always been. I just wasn't going to be his victim anymore. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private dining room at the hotel, all crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. David looked nervous but happy. Emma looked like she'd stepped off the cover of Vogue, and my parents were practically glowing with pride. This was their moment, their son's perfect wedding to his perfect wife, and everyone who mattered was there to witness it, including Rachel, who arrived 20 minutes late wearing a dress that was definitely too white and definitely too tight for a family event. "Marcus," she squealed, throwing her arms around him like they were the couple getting married. "Thank you so much for inviting me. This is exactly what I needed." I watched my husband light up like a Christmas tree as she pressed herself against him, her hands lingering on his chest just a little too long. He introduced her to my family as my dear friend Rachel, and I watched my mother's polite smile tighten just slightly as she took in Rachel's inappropriate dress and overly familiar behavior. "Elena," Rachel said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look nice. Nice." At my brother's rehearsal dinner, wearing a Valentino dress that cost more than most people's cars, and she called me nice. "Thank you," I said, matching her fake smile with one of my own. "You know, I have someone I'd love you to meet." And that's when Daniel walked in. He looked handsome in his dark suit, professional but approachable, exactly the kind of man who belonged at an event like this. He spotted me across the room and waved, then started making his way over. I felt a sick sort of satisfaction watching Rachel's face as she recognized her husband approaching our little group. The color drained from her cheeks, and she took a small step back from Marcus. "Daniel?" she whispered. "Rachel?" He looked confused, then pleased. "What are you doing here? I thought you said you were staying home tonight because you weren't feeling well." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel Marcus staring at me, beginning to understand that something was very wrong, but not quite grasping what. "Rachel?" He looked confused, then pleased. "What are you doing here? I thought you said you were staying home tonight because you weren't feeling well." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel Marcus staring at me, beginning to understand that something was very wrong, but of course, I said, standing to give him a brief hug. "I'm sorry the evening didn't turn out the way we'd hoped." "Actually," he said, loud enough for Marcus to hear, "I think it turned out exactly the way it needed to." Rachel had no choice but to follow her husband out of the dining room, leaving Marcus sitting alone across from me. The silence between us was deafening. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. "That," I said, taking a sip of my wine, "was me trusting you completely. Just like you asked. You orchestrated this entire thing." "I invited a lovely photographer to be my +1 at a family event," I said innocently. "Just like you invited your dear friend Rachel. If you trust me, you'll get it." Using his own words against him felt better than I'd imagined it would. Marcus was furious, but there was nothing he could do about it. Not here, not now, not in front of my family and their friends. He had to sit there and pretend everything was fine while inside. I knew he was seething. But here's the thing about public humiliation. It's not about the moment itself. It's about what everyone remembers afterward. For the rest of the evening, people kept asking Marcus about his friend who'd left so suddenly. They wanted to know if everything was okay, if there was anything they could do to help. Each question was another small cut, another reminder of how badly he'd miscalculated. My mother, bless her, was particularly brutal in her politeness. "Marcus, dear," she said during coffee and dessert, "I do hope your friend is all right." She seemed so distressed. And her poor husband looked absolutely devastated. "I'm sure they'll work it out," Marcus muttered. "Marriage is such hard work," she continued, with a meaningful look at both of us. "It requires so much trust and communication. Elena, you must feel so fortunate to have a husband who values honesty above all else." I smiled at my mother, understanding perfectly well that she knew exactly what had happened and was offering her own form of justice. "I do feel fortunate, Mom. Marcus has taught me so much about the importance of being true to yourself and your values." That night, back in our hotel room, Marcus finally exploded. "You humiliated me," he shouted. "In front of your entire family. You made me look like a fool." "I didn't make you look like anything," I said calmly, removing my earrings. "You did that all by yourself when you decided to bring your married girlfriend to my brother's wedding." "She's not my girlfriend." "No. Then what would you call a married woman who lies to her husband about her whereabouts so she can attend events with another man? What would you call someone who texts you at all hours about fake emergencies? What would you call someone whose emotional needs you prioritize over your wife's?" Marcus had no answer for that, because we both knew what the answer was. "You trapped me," he said instead. "I trusted you," I corrected. "Just like you asked me to. You said if I trusted you, I'd get it." Well, I got it, Marcus. I got that you care more about Rachel's feelings than mine. I got that you're willing to humiliate your wife to make your girlfriend happy. I got that you think I'm so weak and pathetic that I'll just take whatever you dish out and say thank you. Elena. But you know what else I got? I continued, feeling stronger than I'd felt in years. I got that I don't have to accept this. I got that I deserve better than being treated like a side character in my own marriage. And I got that sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming and crying, it's just letting people see who you really are. The wedding the next day was beautiful, but the tension between Marcus and me was obvious to anyone paying attention. We barely spoke during the ceremony, and at the reception, he spent most of his time talking to David's friends while I danced with my family and enjoyed myself for the first time in months. People kept asking where Rachel was, if she was feeling better, if she'd enjoyed meeting Daniel the night before. Each question was another reminder that Marcus's carefully constructed facade had cracked wide open, but the real moment of victory came during the father-daughter dance. As I watched my brother spin his new wife around the dance floor, looking happier than I'd ever seen him, I felt something settle into place inside my chest. I deserved that kind of love. I deserved a partner who would protect me, not humiliate me. I deserved someone who would prioritize our relationship over everyone else's convenience. And I deserve someone who wouldn't make me fight for basic respect in my own marriage. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, because this story isn't over yet. Marcus and I barely spoke during the drive home. He was still angry about the rehearsal dinner, still convinced that I'd somehow wronged him by refusing to be humiliated quietly. But I could see something else in his face too, fear. Because for the first time in our marriage, I'd outmaneuvered him. For the first time, he wasn't in complete control. When we got home, he tried to pretend everything was normal. He went back to his usual routine: work, gym, mysterious phone calls that he claimed were business-related. But Rachel wasn't calling anymore. According to my sources, Sarah, who knew someone, Daniel had filed for divorce the week after the wedding. Rachel was dealing with lawyers and dividing assets, and explaining to her friends why her marriage had imploded so suddenly. Marcus tried calling her a few times, but she never picked up. I know this because I checked our phone records, something I'd never done before but felt perfectly justified in doing now. He tried to reach out 6 times in 2 weeks, with no response. For a man who was used to having 2 women competing for his attention, suddenly having neither was a shock to his system. "Rachel's going through a hard time," he announced one evening over dinner. "The divorce is really taking a toll on her." "That's unfortunate," I said, not looking up from my salad. "I think I should reach out, see if she needs support." I said carefully, "that would be incredibly inappropriate, given that you're the reason her marriage ended." "I'm not the reason." "Marcus." I set down my fork and looked at him directly. "A woman who lies to her husband about her whereabouts to attend events with you, who calls you at midnight about fake emergencies, who accepts invitations to family weddings as your +1, that woman was having an emotional affair. And emotional affairs destroy marriages just as effectively as physical ones. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "Since when do you talk like this?" he asked. "Since I realized that being a good wife doesn't mean being a silent wife," I replied. "Since I learned that supporting your spouse doesn't mean supporting their bad decisions. Since I understood that respect is not optional in a marriage." We finished dinner in silence, and that night, Marcus slept in the guest room again. But this time, I wasn't lying awake wondering what I'd done wrong. This time, I was planning my next move. Because here's what I'd learned from the rehearsal dinner: the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, the people who've been lying are the ones who get hurt. Marcus had spent our entire marriage making me feel like I was crazy for questioning his relationship with Rachel. He'd made me feel small and insecure and paranoid. But I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I was married to a man who was emotionally cheating on me, and I'd finally found the courage to stop pretending it was acceptable. The final revelation came 3 months later, when I was going through Marcus's laptop to find our tax documents. I found an email thread between him and Rachel that went back 2 years. 2 years of intimate conversations, of emotional support, of sharing details about our marriage that he'd never shared with me. In one email, sent just a week before David's wedding, Rachel wrote, "I can't wait to see you this weekend. It's been so hard pretending to be happy with Daniel when all I think about is you. After the wedding, when things calm down, maybe we can finally talk about making this official." Marcus's response: "I know, baby. Elena doesn't suspect anything, and honestly, I don't think she'd fight for our marriage anyway. She's too passive. After David's wedding, we can start planning our exit strategies." I sat in our home office, reading email after email of my husband planning to leave me for his girlfriend, and I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Relief that I hadn't been crazy. Relief that my instincts had been right all along. Relief that I'd already started protecting myself. And relief that Marcus was about to learn that this passive wife had been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. You see, the week after David's wedding, I'd done something Marcus didn't know about. I'd hired a private investigator to document his relationship with Rachel. I'd also started secretly recording conversations where he gaslit me about their friendship. And I'd been meeting with the best divorce attorney in Los Angeles, a woman who specialized in protecting the assets of women married to wealthy, cheating husbands. Marcus thought he was planning his exit strategy. But I'd been planning mine since the night he chose Rachel's comfort over mine at my own brother's wedding. The divorce papers were filed on a Tuesday. Marcus came home from work to find me sitting at our dining room table with my attorney, a stack of legal documents, and printed copies of every email, text message, and phone record that proved his emotional affair. "Elena, what is this?" he asked, though I could see in his eyes that he already knew. "This is your exit strategy," I said calmly. "The one you've been planning with Rachel for 2 years. His face went white. "You went through my computer?" "I went through our computer," I corrected, "to find our tax documents. What I found instead was 2 years of evidence that you've been planning to leave me for another woman." My attorney slid a document across the table. "Mr. Williams, this is a petition for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and emotional abuse. We're also requesting spousal support, half of all marital assets, and the Malibu house, given that my client's emotional distress was caused by your systematic betrayal of your marriage vows." Marcus looked from the papers to me to my attorney and back to the papers. "Emotional abuse? Gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, Marcus," I said. "Making your spouse feel crazy for having reasonable concerns about your behavior is emotional abuse. Prioritizing another woman's emotional needs over your wife's is emotional abuse. And planning to leave your marriage while making your wife believe she's the problem is definitely emotional abuse. You can't prove any of that." My attorney smiled. "Actually, we can. We have recordings of conversations where you dismissed Mrs. Williams' concerns about Rachel. We have documentation of your extensive communication with Ms. Rachel Davis, including emails where you discuss leaving your wife. We have witness statements from the wedding weekend that confirm your inappropriate behavior." Witness statements. "Daniel Martinez was very cooperative when we explained how you'd manipulated his wife into having an emotional affair," I said. "Turns out photographers have excellent memories for detail. He remembered every conversation from that rehearsal dinner, every lie Rachel told, every uncomfortable moment. He was happy to provide a statement for my divorce proceedings." Marcus slumped into a chair, finally understanding that his carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. "Elena, we can work this out," he said desperately. "It doesn't have to end this way." "You're right," I agreed. "It didn't have to end this way. It could have ended with you respecting our marriage. It could have ended with you cutting contact with Rachel the first time I expressed discomfort. It could have ended with you choosing your wife over your girlfriend. But instead," I continued, standing up and smoothing down my dress, "it's ending with you learning that underestimating your spouse is the most expensive mistake you can make." The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got the house, half his business assets, and enough spousal support to maintain my lifestyle while I figured out what I wanted to do next. Marcus had to sell 2 of his dealerships to pay the settlement, and his reputation in our social circles never quite recovered from the wedding incident. Rachel, meanwhile, had her own problems. Her divorce from Daniel was ugly and public, and word got around about her affair with Marcus. She lost several friends, her job at a high-end marketing firm, and had to move in with her mother while she rebuilt her life. Marcus and Rachel did try to make a go of it for a while, but here's the thing about relationships built on betrayal: they don't tend to last. When you know someone is capable of lying to their spouse for years, it's hard to trust them not to lie to you too. They broke up 3 months after my divorce was finalized. Marcus tried to contact me a few times after that, claiming he'd made a mistake, that he wanted to work things out. But some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. I'm telling you this story not because I'm proud of ending my marriage, but because I'm proud of finding my voice. For years, I let Marcus make me feel small and crazy and worthless. I accepted his gaslighting as gospel.